Perfect. Excellent. Hey, Marta, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. So just like we were talking about off camera, I'm just going to ask you, just give me a little bit of who is Marta, what do you do, and how do you service your clients?
Awesome. Okay, so I am a strategy first brand designer. And what that means is I take over 30 years of my creative roles experience that I have, and I apply that to my ability of digging deep into the strategy side of branding as well. And I marry those two so that when a client comes to me, and I typically service small businesses that are startups or medium size, scale up. So if they're growing and they need a refresh, and nonprofits, those are the three that I target. So when they come to me, they're able to get that marriage of a design eye and strategy. And then, in the end, it all comes together with a new identity.
So I've had the privilege of working with you a little bit, and I know you start off with some audits. So tell me a little bit about when did you start using that audit to kind of get a bit of a definition of who you're working with before you started the plan? How long have you been doing that for?
I guess I've been doing that since I decided to hone in and niche down into being a brand designer, really, and focus on just brand designing. Prior to that, in my 30-year experience, as I was talking about a minute ago, I was doing graphic design. So it's just sort of anything under the sun, graphic design, which was, super fun and really helps to build your skill set and whatnot. But then when I decided, it was right around COVID, maybe just at the tail end of COVID, I said, you know what? I think it's time, like everybody was doing, how do we pivot a little bit in your business? What can you do to really have a good offering that people are needing? And so that's when I said, that's it. I'm passionate about branding. I love the process, but I wanted to make sure there was a very distinct process to when somebody worked with me. I think there's a lot of talented designers out there, 100%. But what some of them may lack is the fact that they don't have a process. They just love to, jump in there, roll up their sleeves, and then, start designing and say, okay, you said you love red and you love circles. I'm going to create you an amazing logo. And I'm sure that's going to happen in some way, shape, or form. But the getting there seems quite a bit arbitrary and not connected to the company's goals and missions and visions, right? So to answer your question more directly, I started doing that audit and it's a brand discovery really document to help guide my clients right when I did that pivot. And I said, you know what, if they're going to come to me as a branding expert, I do have to have a very well-defined process. It helps me to stay on track and make sure I have all the right answers, but it helps them because they've lost. They feel like they should come to me with all the answers or come to me knowing exactly the visual direction. And while some of that is a little true, that I want them to have an idea, it doesn't mean they have to have it all figured out until we go through the branding audit with them. And then I can identify gaps. And it is kind of a back and forth process, I would say, in the initial stages, for sure.
So you've been doing this for a while. You said 25 years. I also know that you do networking quite a bit, and I've seen you at work. You're a good networker. You got a polished pattern to that as well. So walk me through, if you were to meet me for the first time and I recognized I needed your services, what does that look like? How do we start? Does it start with the audit? What does it start with usually? How does that process go?
Yes, absolutely. I try to start always with the audit. And I think what happens is sometimes some companies, again, depending on where they're at, are they in the startup? Are they, just acquired some seed money or grants, whatever it may be? So they may have done some business planning. They have an idea of what marketing is, but have they really dug deep into defining what their company is going to be like? And then how do those strategic words, I'm going to simplify it by calling it words, translate into something visual? So I always start with the audit. Of course, there's this need at times to expand it a little and dig deeper, or reduce it a little and condense and say, look, you came to me with some homework done, so why don't we fast track a little? And all you need to do is really provide me a little bit more on your competition, on your direction of why are you saying you need to expand the company? Like, there's certain things that I might have to just dig deeper. And I should also note, because I think it's important to note that as much as I am so fortunate to have interacted with many marketing professionals, and that's how I honed my skills of how to tie in strategy design. I think there are still circumstances, depending on the size of the client, the niche of the client, where I need to still engage a marketing partner that would say, you know what, I think let's do this together. Let's dig a little deeper. They have their own, worked out process. It's vetted how they've done it. And I respect that there are times where, you need to kind of bring in another partner, which is fantastic in our world of, fractionals and whatnot.
So, and that other partner, is that somebody that you would bring on? Think you recognize the client needs that extra help?
Yes.
And has it ever been the other way around, where the client has a partner and that partner's brought you in, or vice versa? Like, how does that typically work?
Yeah, it has happened the other way around. Yeah, that's a good question. I would typically, because I like to steer the process so that I know we are not skipping steps, then I try to identify by saying, I think we could use some additional knowledge, help, expertise. Why don't I bring in A, B, or C? And that's also the beauty of networking, right, Richard, is having so many people in your back pocket that are perfect for that said client, because not everybody is perfect. Not everybody is the right fit. And I think we all know that. But I think admitting it and actually putting it into practice is so important for any business to succeed, your own as well as your clients, right? You're not doing anybody a favor if you're not right fitting them to the right partners. So I try to have a collection of partners. A collection can be the 3. It doesn't mean I have to have 20, right? But just enough to know, like, there's a specific company I know she loves to work with purpose-driven companies. So when I engage a nonprofit, she's right in the back of my mind. Okay, if I need her to jump in, she's ready, right? If I'm working with someone who's very professional services or very, e-commerce, right? Then it's like, oh, this marketing person has a lot of knowledge and know-how. So that's kind of a bit of my process as to why I like to lead it and bring in my partner, as opposed to saying, okay, I understand you have a marketing partner, let's work with them. I'm not going to reject that. I'm just going to bring it to the table. Like, are you open to also hearing about my partnerships, right?
And I've worked with a couple of your partners. You and I have collaborated a little bit on at least pitching for business, right? Yeah. And I could see, I see the fit right away with those other partners. It was pretty natural. Is that, like, when you get to pick that partner, does that come across to the client as well? Like, that you obviously have worked together and you got overlapping.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I've never had a client say, oh, I feel a disconnect, or, oh, this person's not understanding me, right? So I would say yes. I'd say we get there fairly quickly, because you tend to have sort of a joint or a group kickoff meeting, right? Just to make sure everybody's on the same page. You're presenting as a team. You really are a team, so you need to present that way, and gets the client comfortable, right? It establishes that trust and kind of like, okay, I get why an extra person is on this project, or another person. Yeah.
And just for the sake, the one thing that comes in my head, when that partner, how do you manage it? Because I've brought in partners where they're billing the client directly. I've brought in partners where the client's paying me, I'm paying the partner. How do you prefer? Or do you have all kinds of variations how you work together?
I prefer to be the only point of contact for billing and invoicing and whatnot. I know it does for the client, right? When they just have to look at one invoice. Typically, those partners have never said to me, oh, no, I prefer to bill direct. Like, they're pretty open to how I would like that to work. But there are instances where if the client says to me, you know what, for their own internal processes, I'm not sure 100% what it may be, but they say, oh, I want to have a direct link to such and such. It could be because of a small thing like an HST number or whatever it may, however they need to break that out. But I would say for the most part, it's been pretty smooth in just saying everything collapses under myself. It's no different than if I'm offering a specialized service like performance marketing, right? So if I need someone to work on some SEO, some organic search, some whatever it may be for my client, which is not my expertise, and I, again, bring in a partner, then same thing. It's like, I'm just going to have them work with me directly, or bill me directly, and then interact with the client as needed. That part is, I think, has to be very open communication, but the behind the scenes billing and whatnot, I try to make that just a one direct line.
Yeah, that's my preference too. I feel like it's less bouncing around for the client, and you don't, because even if they were going direct, you kind of got to figure out what's going on. Or they being like, you want to make sure that subcontractors being paid, they're doing good service. That like, so you can, I feel like the control aspect is better when they're going through you, right? So
yeah,
and
maybe
if
it's a minor thing, but I'll mention that when I initiate my projects, I always take a 50% deposit up front. That not only covers myself in terms of making sure the client is serious, they're going to, you know, sign on, do the work, but it also means I can cover off any partners and give them their portion, because we all need, you know, the money to keep flowing, that machine to keep working. So it's maybe a minor thing to mention, but I think when people don't take a little bit of that upfront commitment, I know in our group, some people have shared that they have suffered for it. And it's like, oh, but you know, they usually pay, and all of a sudden they're not paying, or I didn't know what to do about it. So just a side note about why that works well too.
that makes total sense too, and then covers that. So, you know, you feel confident that you're going to pay them basically, and they're going to get paid. Yeah, so I'm gonna turn it to, like, you've had a long career through an industry that's changed quite a bit, and it's changing again. I know you've done presentations on AI and working with you. So not just AI in general, but how have you managed the change of how things work? We were talking the other day. I said to you, I was working for back in my early days, collecting advertising from a client. I remember them trying to give me a Word document as a substitute for like an InDesign or Quark or something like that. Tell me about change, technical change, and how you kind of your resilience to that, and how you try to keep things the same, but going with the ebbs and flows of change.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, because there's like so much to unpack in there. But I'm going to say, you know, not to belabor the point, but to say it's such an important time with AI being not if I want to, it's if I have to. Like, you have to adapt to some of these tools in order to stay relevant. And I think our clients are more and more aware of potential tools that you could be and should be using. I had a new client query like, oh, so what happens if I give you this file and it's not the right size or resolution? Do you know any AI software that can just like quadruple that? Because, you know, I know of one, and I think he was just testing me, if I'm going to be honest, right? And I thought, okay, fair. It's fair game, right? You want to make sure who you're hiring is staying abreast of what's going on. That's a technical thing, but it is within my world of design, right? I do want to make a point of saying, I think one of the biggest things that's been really interesting to see explode is Canva.
Yeah.
So that kind of tool that is very, you know, it's really DIY pretty much, if we're going to be honest, because it wants to empower people to get on there, use their templates, use their tools. And by all means, I'm not saying it's not a good tool. It's pretty robust in what it can offer. You can upload, you know, brand systems into there, right? It can, again, dictate fonts and colors and palettes, and it helps you to really streamline a little bit when you're not a designer and you're not used to, you know, having to keep all these things, all these sort of things in your mind of, am I making sure this is consistent, this is cohesive, this is, you know, messaging. There's so many touch points. So Canva in itself has been a very interesting tool, because I have already had some clients, or even some partners that I would freelance for, or sort of design for, in other words, you know, contracted me, that would say, so how do you feel about then taking your things and applying it into Canva? It is such a tricky question, because I feel like that's like falling a little bit into a hole, right? And not because people are setting you up to fail. It's just the reality is so many people use Canva, and that's why I'm picking on it right now. So what I do with that kind of circumstance is I say, I'm more than happy to supply my clients with what they need if they feel comfortable in managing after they've completed the project with me in Canva. There may be a time, it may even be soon, where I can jump in and help them on Canva, but I also don't want to totally move away from using my design software, which I don't think I would ever do because it's just my foundation. It's where I come from as a designer. And I think my last point, I saw this one place and I thought, you know what, this has got to be my model from now on. I think, AI will help us to generate stuff and create stuff, but really, as the creator, we are still the curator. So I want to always make sure my clients get why you still come to me from the get-go and what tools am I using, yes, to expedite things or get, additional ideas and the ball rolling. I'm happy to do that. As you said, I presented that, I think it was last winter. And I continue to do that. I do, but I don't want it to be the end all and be all.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I studied graphic design as a young, in my 20s, right? Quark was the big thing. I remember when InDesign took over, and it's had it ever since. And the fact that you're still using it's like pretty dominant, the same system. I wanted to ask you about software too, because you use the Adobe Creative Suite. My question is this is a roundabout one. You can take it whatever way you want to do. Has the software you've been using, because it's the same software for a while, has it kept up with the times? Like, has it kept up with the competition of Canva and other elements has it allowed you, enabled you by being an expert in that software to keep up as well? And that, I know that's not a normal question, but that's more of a curiosity for my sake, because that can equip you to tackle Canva. It can equip you to other things in the market if your software is keeping up with what's going on, right? But I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yes, I'm going to say they have to a large extent. I can't say tool for tool. I don't think that would be fair because I haven't analyzed tool for tool, but I'll give you a couple of quick examples. For instance, back a couple, even just maybe a year or two, I can't remember exactly when they introduced this. You can generate a QR code within InDesign now, right? Simple little thing, but before you would have to go to an exterior site, whatever site you prefer. There was many of them that offered you a free QR code, and QR codes have been pretty big in the last decade, right? That's just one example that, again, makes it very easy. You generate it right within the software. You can change the color of it. You can do a bunch of things that need to be done for a QR code. It does not allow you to customize it as far as some of the sites where it says, okay, now I'd like to embed my logo within the QR code. So that's kind of one thing that it's still not there yet. But that's, again, one thing that they've done to make it easier to, again, generate things that tie you to the digital world, which I think is what InDesign is trying to do. Definitely, they've integrated a lot of the AI prompts, like being able to generate, whether it's imagery or do things that require, I'll give you an example. I was working with a client and it was for a trade show. So we're taking the brand that we developed and now we're applying it to, paraphernalia of all sorts, t-shirts, uniforms, you name it. And I said, you know what, instead of going to look for a white t-shirt somewhere, a yellow t-shirt, whatever the color was, I'm just going to quickly generate one in InDesign and told the prompt, right? Told my AI tool, hey, I want a yellow, very specific, right? V-neck t-shirt, fitted for women, hanging on a hanger. Like, I did the best prompt I could, and it generated something that was very good, right? And
wow, that's cool.
So that's very cool. Now, can you use those files for a lot of end results? Probably not, but for the purpose of, like we were saying, it's the initial idea, generate a mock-up, generate the idea, get an idea going. Yes, it's very good and very efficient at doing that. And so design is done a lot of that.
I can see you don't want to waste your time designing a t-shirt. Like the t-shirt is just the thing in the background, basically, right? So having you be able to focus on your trade, that's kind of neat. And that's a good answer for that question. It seems to have kept up and allowed you to keep up and stay within the tool. Because otherwise, you got to start exploring other tools, and they could lose you, right? I mean, there's a chance that they could lose that dedication and loyalty they have. I'm going to ask a really generic question here, so we're going to back up a little bit. Like, when clients come to you, do they understand what branding means? Do you find when you're going and meeting people and networking, you have to explain that a bit, or is that like, okay, I understand it, Or do you come and you think they understand it, and then they come and there's an obvious gap there? Has that been a challenge?
It has been, actually. It's funny. Some do understand it well, and then some don't. And I think not to their fault, because branding has become this, it's your logo. It's just your logo, which is not correct, right? Branding is so much deeper. And that's why I think it's so important. If you are going to niche down or hone your skills as a visual designer who can create beautiful, unique, fantastic, bold, so many words we can use to describe a visual identity these days, because it has to be all those things. But then if you're not able to do the strategy portion, or have a partner to engage to do the strategy portion, then you're falling so short of what the potential of that company really should be. And how, so what I had to do, Richard, is I had to start doing presentations about what is branding. And at first I feel like I was getting a bit of the eye roll, like, come on, everybody knows what branding is, right? But then when they saw me doing, like, branding is not just your logo, or branding is not just, it is your personality. It is all your touch points. It is your messaging. It is this. It's even the clothes you wear. I mean, I'm wearing one of my branding colors today, pink, So it's all those touch points. It's the tone. It's all these things. And something like your logo, which is such a key element, is really a visual signal, right? There's a whole bunch of signals that you're going to create, and many people call them assets, and there's so many terminologies we can use. But I started doing that a few years ago, and then I feel like with the onset of so much information out there and people doing a better job explaining what branding really is, then people kind of get it faster. And when they don't get it, you know what? It gives me that opportunity to position myself differently, like to explain why am I not just a really good logo designer, or a really good, because I'm very passionate about the design portion of it. And I don't think that's ever going to change. That's what's really fueled my fire to niche down into branding. But I don't want them to forget that first important discovery, foundational marketing speak is so important. And that gives me that opportunity. So that's why I always say strategy first. And that kind of makes them go, what does that mean, strategy first? Well, let me tell you, right? And this is that kind of conversation that I would have.
Yeah, I feel like strategy along with branding can have some different interpretations, but
Yes.
I like what you're doing, because it feels like you're taking them on a journey, right? And I feel like the visual element can be subjective, and if you're taking them on that journey, it helps them get to that end result and feel comfortable about it. And then when they go to explain to others why they like this logo, they have a journey behind it. Kind of like, I feel that would give them more credibility in terms of, like, how they got to this thing that they're going to carry and use for a long time.
Mhm.
So I feel like that makes total sense. And then also, I think for those that would be visually, like, would have challenges visually, it gives them a bit of a stepping stone into your world. So you're just not hit with a visual, like, I don't know, is that good or bad? Like, you're walking them through a bit of a journey to get to the end result. So I feel like that adds some credibility to the whole path of journey. But do you agree, or?
I do agree. I think that's one of the reasons why I devised my own process, and I have it listed on my website, so it's not a secret or anything. But I coined a process by using a term so that it was easy for me to refer to. I can use it in presentations when people meet me, especially easy on a website, as you know, because you always want to make information easy to scan, grab what you want from it, read more if you want, don't. And I call the process "It Works." And the reason, and I use the word work a lot, like I create visual identities that work. And I purposely really drive that word work in there, because it's simple, and because people get, that's what we want things to work. We go to work. Like, the work has such a very strong connotation to what you get out of something, right? You're going to produce good work. So I'll tell you quickly what the acronym really stands for. Is the W is right. And when the writing is happening, it's the strategic, right? It's the filling in of that questionnaire. It's the documenting all the things that need to be said. And then the back and forth of filling in the gaps. I identified, you fill this in, but it looks like, you're a bit too generic. Let's zero in, get a little bit clearer on that. And by the way, I know when you and I interacted, I just sent you a questionnaire. But I find for some clients, they actually need my other option, which is to sign up with me one-on-one, and we do it like a workshop. And it happens over the course of 4 live 40-minute sessions. So it doesn't take forever, but I break it down into 4 bite size so that we can actually accomplish it together. So that's the first thing. That's W. O and R kind of go hand in hand. O means to orchestrate, which is my job. I then, get all the music flowing, if you want to call it, of what you've given me. And I translate that strategy into what then becomes, the visual palette and sort of the direction that we're going to go in. And the R is when I reveal it back to the client. And there's always, again, this back and forth process. There's usually 3 proofs. A lot of direction needs to happen at this stage, especially like you said, Richard. So if I don't take them on this journey from the beginning, then we're just going to fall into subjective comments. We're only going to go based on I like, I don't like, I don't like. And while those things are still important, they're part of the pie, they're not all the pieces of the pie, right? You may love red, but you're talking to a target market that finds red too harsh, right? You may not love primary colors, but you're talking to children because you're going to be a yoga studio for children. So you have to embrace that primary colors are going to really attract them. So that's the O and the R. And then the K is keep. So I do my best. How do we keep and maintain this brand identity that we've created for you based on the strategy? And now what do we do to maintain it? So one of the tools I did is I created my own brand portal on my website so that I could help them maintain the consistency, right? Don't start creating versions of your logo at a whim. Don't start scaling and then it's stretched. And, these are very simple little things I'm talking about, but it's things that people do all the time, right? I can't find my logo. Where is that logo? So I created the brand portal because I wanted people to feel that complete experience with me so that when you're done, if for some reason you don't feel comfortable housing your own things, because again, you're just not very organized or you just can't seem to find them all the time, I guarantee you at least 3 clients email me several times a year asking for their logo. And it's like, how many times have I sent it to you, right? It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. So that's kind of the start to finish, the WORK, why I use it. Yeah, and it keeps me structured, right? It keeps me focused too.
I got another last question, and we've kind of been hitting all around this. So just to polish off things, like my question would be, what's a relationship like with you? Like, is it, and by this, I mean, is it more project based? Do you do this and then you exit? They have the portal and stuff like that? Or is it an ongoing thing? Like, is this something that you'd expect to, like, you get a client, you're going to have a client for years. They may not come back all the time. It's quarterly or annually or something like that. What's a relationship, like a client relationship like with you?
Ideally, I would love the relationship to be from startup to scaling to new and exciting, even, which means they keep scaling, really. Then there's no next stagnant. For a not-profit or a not-for-profit, it doesn't always follow that. Again, just because there's different things that they have to go through, different steps, but they can still similarly follow that. I'm starting up, I need your help. Now we're adding more products, we're adding more sort of, let's call it services for the awareness and how we need more funding. There's many things that drive that. So ideally, I would like to have them from that part. I sometimes call it, you've given birth to the baby. Now we're giving the baby some personality. We're clothing it. Oh, guess what? Is it crawling? Great. It rolled over. Now it's crawling. Now it's running. Now it's walking. So walking, then running, I guess I should say. So that's the ideal. But what does happen, I have to be honest, is I get a bit of both, right? I get a lot of the, okay, I already have a brand. Can you work with it? Absolutely. So what do? We devise direction, a look and feel, almost a design language, if I can use that term, so that we take what you have that's working, but we still build on it so that we can improve, because typically what they have out there, it doesn't look professional, doesn't look unique enough for them. It doesn't attract this target market, or maybe it's a new target market, right? So I do find the one and done happens, and I have to be comfortable with that, in the sense of saying, They did come to me for the main offering that I have with them. I keep the door open so that they know, when you're ready to move ahead and really promote yourself on a consistent basis, on a regular basis. Maybe, again, I'm not using Canva, or maybe using a bit of Canva. Like, there's a lot of kind of pieces of the make it go one way or another, but I do both, to answer the question in a sort of succinct.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I can see a lot of client relationships going like that, right? Where you circle in and back and whatnot. So that makes sense. So I'll open up the question for you. Like, is there anything that I missed that you want to kind of cover off in terms of like getting to know Marta better? We talk about kids and stuff like that. I know you can, but I'll say that for another one.
No. We're not going to do that. Yeah, that would be all day. No, I think we covered most of it. I think hopefully after watching this, people have a good understanding of what's, the unique thing about marrying strategy and visuals, right, together, having a passion for both of those so that the process is complete. I think we covered most of it, really, Richard. I mean, maybe I'll make one quick comment about, there is a difference between rebranding and refreshing. I think sometimes people get confused about that too. Like, what do those two terms really mean? I had the opportunity to have an interview with Manu as well, who, as you know, has his own channel, his Sweet Money channel. So that was a fun interview with him. And he asked that question. I think it was such a good question that he caught on. He's like, what do you mean? Aren't they the same thing? And I was like, no, they are totally not the same thing. So real quick, I'll say rebranding is a much deeper exercise when you have to reposition your whole company because you have undergone a radical change of some sort. It could be one element, but it still pushed you in a very completely different direction. Is it a new target audience? Is it a new product? Is it, we've been in business for 10 years and we are just like plateaued big time. We've got to figure out, what do we do? Do we completely rebrand ourselves and start again positioning ourselves differently? So that requires a bigger exercise. Whereas refreshing, I feel most people get that word easily, like, it comes to them easier because you're taking what's working and you're retaining some of those parts. Is it the color palette still works? Some of the typography still works. You're going back to the strategy, your messaging works, but it just sounds a little bit dated. So let's update the terminology. So the refreshing happens more than rebranding, if I'm going to be honest. The rebranding tends to be taken on by these larger agencies just because they position themselves as the expert in that. And I guess I should say that too. I think a lot of smaller boutique style companies that have lots of experience, because we've been doing what we're doing for a long time, sometimes miss out on those opportunities because we don't have the scale of saying, a large agency, and there's so many of them out there, to say, this is why you come to me for rebranding. They feel more comfortable that you could tackle the refresh. So I feel like I probably do more of the refresh, and I try to instigate those conversations, even if I'm not sure the client is ready, right? They may come to me like, so how is your brand being received? What have you done lately that's different, or what? And so I try to get those conversations going, because a lot of the times they are too close to it. They are very emotionally attached if it's their own. If I'm speaking with the CEO, which typically is the person reaching out to me, or someone in that upper management level. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of put that out there, rebrand versus refresh.
Oh, that's a great exit. I would have not thought to ask that question. It's a good question and a good definition of the two. I can see, I can better understand the two now. Well, I appreciate you giving the time to share a little bit more about yourself, Marta. I'm going to put this on the B2B cohort so everybody else in our group can get to know Marta a little bit better. And I enjoy it. And you're going to do one for me coming back, because we got to know each other better through that whole branding 100%. Process. So I'm excited about that when that happens as well. So I will
send your link as soon as this call is done.
Excellent. All right, Marta, thanks so much. This is a Monday, so have a fantastic rest of your week. It's only going to get better from here because it's Monday, right?
I hear you. You as well. Right back at you.
All right. See you, Marta. Bye now.
Bye, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.